somebody has an injury, for example, they broke their leg. It's not that you broke your leg. Why did you break your leg? What were the circumstances of that? Not that you have cancer. Why do you have cancer? And when did cancer form? What was the event? What was the psychological, physical event that started the cancer? Now, this may be controversial to some people. My experience is if we can find that event, which is cancer, when did it first appear? What happened 2 years prior to that? And inevitably, cancer is related to sadness and loss.
Today is the best day of your life, so let your light shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine.
Welcome, beloveds. Thank you for joining us for another episode of So Many Ways to Heal, as we explore resources in the realm of healing and wellness by interviewing experts in their field. I'm Daphne, and I'm really excited to be your guide as we explore ways of healing the body, the mind, and the soul to find wholeness, health, vitality, and to reveal your authentic self. Be sure to like and subscribe and turn on the bell notification so you don't miss an episode. And share this video with your soul tribe as we spread healing through the world. You can find us on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. Remember, the best healing tools are love and gratitude. So I'm sending my love and gratitude to you. Thank you, Haku-san, for joining us today. I'm really excited to have Haku-san here on So Many Ways to Heal. Haku-san is a master of Jin Shin Jyustu, which, in this podcast, we're exploring all of these ways to heal that not many people know about. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation with you. Well, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what's Jin Shin Jyustu?
Jin Shin Jyustu is a healing art. Uses the placement, it understands the energetic patterns of the body, and by the use of different locations of the body and the use of the hands, and we can harmonize the body if there's a project. We call them projects versus problems. It has a whole different emotional ting to it, or touch to it. And so the art form, if you will, is to know the art, of course, know these flows and the pathways that go through that, and the mechanics of doing that. But in my view, the most important part is to understand the mind and its relationship to the body. Because there's certainly no question in this day and age, there is a direct relationship between the two. What the mind thinks, the body is at the effect of that. So if we begin to understand that relationship, the relationship of the body, which I call the container, because it contains what? The essence of the human body. The five senses, the mind that really interprets all the inputs from the outside world, and then makes decisions about how to live the life. If that decision-making process is not in harmony, in other words, if there's too much worry or sadness or anger, then that tension in the breath will have an effect in the body. Sooner or later, that tension affects the exhale. So there's a holding that goes on. And where does that holding manifest itself? And if so, why? What is the belief system of this person, and why did they choose to respond in the way that they did about something? And that's the great mystery for me, and that's the thing that I find so fascinating and intriguing about working with not only clients but with study groups and presenting programs. And that for me started in 2011 and taught pretty extensively throughout the world, particularly in Europe. And right along in parallel with that, then I received transmission as a Buddhist teacher. So both of those, the study of the mind and then the study of the body, really blended itself so well. And the textbooks that are part of this modality are laced with Zen Buddhism. In other words, it talks about, in one place it uses the phrase pure mind. In another place it talks about we are one, the cosmos itself. In another place it talks about unencumbered communion with the Creator. In another place it says stop, look within and listen. There's something there. There's something there that Mary Brewmaster, the founder of Jin Shin Jyustu, said, have a look. And those are in the first 3 pages of the textbooks, and then after that, pretty much technique. You have a problem, what flows do you do to harmonize that project? And what fascinates me, what interests me, is the first 3 pages of the textbook. That's the essence. You can work on technique all day long. And you may feel, we call them sessions. People get sessions 45 minutes to an hour. And you feel really wonderful getting off the table. But about 8 hours later, the whole thing coming back. The disharmony comes back, headache, whatever that label is caused, comes back because the underlying cause of that hasn't changed. Not really. So as you see, many people going to acupuncture and so on. What's the long-term effect? Why don't we change? What is that? And this is my great interest. Why don't we do that? And then therefore enter in Zen Buddhism, if you will, that it's to look at the nature of mind. Why do we do what we do? Why do we do what we're not supposed to do? You know, that whole dialogue in the mind. How do we get to that? And so through the years, in Europe in particular, out of that's evolved different study groups. And in particular, I want to talk about a meditation program that's been going on there for about 4.5, 5 years now. And when people found out that I was a Buddhist teacher, they would say, can you come and do a meditation program? And I said, yes, of course. You never say no.
As a Buddhist or as a teacher?
As anybody. Do you ever say no when somebody says, can you help? Do you ever say no? In my world, the answer is not. Yeah. So, and the people that showed up are not Buddhist at all. There's a pretty good rejection. This is Europe. This is a generation of World War II, so they very much remember that structure and so on. I don't want to spend too much time with that. But there's a lot of resistance about authority. And you do this, and then you put the pandemic in the middle of all that. And so we created an environment there over the years of 4 or 5 years where everybody's invited. No matter what you practice, Christian, Buddhist, doesn't matter, you're invited to come and sit with us. It's very unstructured, and frequently I get asked, well, what type of meditation do you practice? I say, well, we practice turtle meditation. What do you mean turtle meditation? You know turtles, kind of slow and easy, take our time, there's no rush, not a lot of rules, if you want to stop a little bit, it's okay. And that's what we've created. So they come and they sit, and they can sit on a chair, they can sit on the floor, they can sit on the couch. It doesn't matter. It just simply doesn't matter because we're creating something. We're creating a community, a sangha, a place where people can come and kind of exhale, allow themselves to be honest, and with each other, with themselves, and it's absolutely magical. It's absolutely magical to watch this. And the fun part about this is the average age, I would say, is about 68. So we have, rarely do you find somebody coming in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. We have 3 ladies, they're in their 80s, one's 88, and they come and they sit every time, and these programs are every 3 months. So we get together Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday. And we get together and we share. And I do Dharma talks in the morning and the afternoon and talk about the nature of mind and stuff like that. And they're all dutiful, they all take their notes and everything else. It's just so incredibly precious. And the reason that this is so, I'm looking for a word that describes something beyond preciousness and maybe intimacy. These are ladies and gentlemen getting close to the end of life. It's pretty serious stuff. Pretty serious stuff. And I asked them, we go around the room, how old are you, what's your name, what do you want? Why did you come here? And inevitably they will say, by and large, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am. How old are you? 78, 85. I don't know who I am. And we explore, why is it that you don't know who you are? And I would say, okay, now you tell me all the titles and all the roles that you've played in your life. Well, you were a brother, a sister, wife, mother, and it goes on and on and on. Caretaker, all of those kinds of things. And what I've discovered, quite fascinating to me, is that particularly the women spend their whole life caring for everybody else. When they get to the end of their life, they may be caring for their parents or grandparents or something, but inevitably they will also transition. And there they are at the end of their life. What about me? When do I get my opportunity to live my life? When does that start? You know, and the tears come down, everybody's, we all feel it. We all feel it. I mean, that's how connected this little group is. This little group is 20, 25 people, nothing substantial. But the intimacy, the sharing that goes on is just extraordinary. Why? Why? Because this is a safe place for them. This is about telling your story, and listening, Do we really know how to listen? Really listen. How many times have you actually, not you personally, but how many times do we really feel like we've been hurt? Or somebody's not stepping on our conversation or pulling the conversation, directing it back into their little life and all of that. That's what happens to them. They are hurt. They are hurt. And some of the things that come out of that, there was this one lady, rather petite, long relationship, difficult relationship, very traditional relationship. She served, and finally had a change in that relationship. And she had a dream. And her dream was she saw someone bent over like this. And she came on, what is that all about? And she had a friend who was a sculptor. So she goes over there one day and says, I had this dream. And this lady gave her a chisel and a hammer and a block of marble, and no experience at all in being a sculptor. And she started chip, 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 over months. And when she finished, there's this gorgeous statue of a woman bent over on her arms in stone. That was her. She said, I'm waking up. I'm waking up. I mean, that's the stuff that happens. People are starting to wake up. My view is because they have the freedom to do that. And I'm asking hard questions as well.
So you're kind of probing with your questions
to
unearth. Because just sitting, staring at a blank wall isn't necessarily answering those questions. You're kind of listening and then being guided about how to knock on the right doors to bring realization.
That's right. So we sit, and then we do a little kinhin, and then I'll do a Dharma talk. And then after that, it's open to questions.
And for the audience, what's kinhin?
Kinhin is slow meditation. So you sit for 30 minutes or so, and you do this little walking meditation, relaxes the legs, and circulation going. People can have a little drink of water and stuff. And
then the Dharma talk is kind of where you talk Buddhist philosophy, essentially. And then there's questions and
actually, I don't talk much about Buddhist philosophy.
Oh, really?
I really don't, no. And what I really want them to understand is that they have choice in their life. That, of course, there's a difference between freedom and liberty. You can be in a prison cell, not taking your liberty away, but do you have the freedom in there to choose something? So if you've been in a certain mind idea of how things are supposed to be for 60, 70 years, are you really at choice? Not really. Not really. Do you really have freedom to choose a different way of being in the world? And if you're in a relationship with children and grandparents, there's probably not a lot of room in there. So that's what we explore. First you understand that you are a conditioned being, that you have fixed ideas about yes and no. Things that are either yes or no, or the stuff in the middle you don't care about. So we structure our lives based upon expectations and what we want and so on and so forth. And so how do we then start to undo that story that we tell ourselves all the time? Meditation, understanding, that's my view. Settle the mind so it becomes available for something else to enter. Something else. something new, a new way for the mind. What's that about? To pause, to just pause for a few moments. And that's what I'm looking for, that or they look away, because there's the mind that's not thinking now, and it's, what is that?
And so do you feel like, as a practitioner, are you kind of tapping into the field to really know, like, when they've created that space? Is it a visual observation? How are you feeling, sensing into that space?
Yeah, one of the things that's quite remarkable about Jin Shin Jyustu is you learn the ability to read bodies. And what does the body say? What does the face say? What do the gestures say? And the language as well, because we all pretty much have the different languages, of course, but the translation of that language are pretty much all the same. We all use buts and trying tos and efforting and stuff. We all do. So if you understand how they're using that, the context of using that, but, which means everything I said before is not true, everything after the but is true, and you can point out that contradiction to them. Well, what do you mean? And then after a while it becomes a little bit but, aber, which is but in German, aber, and it becomes a little light, but underneath that is slowly begin to what? Self-monitor themselves. They begin to see how they're using language and how they don't have choice. And then once that opens up a little bit, then you say, can you imagine a different experience? Most people can't, because the mind is so used to having the same experience. So look at the same set of facts. You and I may have a different understanding of that, but most people have the same response over and over again. So it's really not a choice. How do you undo that? And that's why sitting is important. So you find your mind slows down. So you take this pause that you develop in sitting and put it in your life.
You were talking about being able to read gestures and postures. I have a question about that, but first, my own experience in my meditation, I find myself, I'll sit down and I feel normal, but then as I sit longer, I'll notice as I'm coming more and more into center that my body's like moving, it's readjusting, things are relaxing, like my shoulder will be up here and I didn't even notice, and then I'll just relax down. It's all these, and I assume the story I have about that is that that's part of my unconscious behavioral patterns about how to operate in the world, how my autonomic nervous system is set. And even though I'm not always tracking that whatever activation or belief system while I'm navigating through life, I notice it when I come into my sitting practice and they start falling away. My question is your skill level at observing gestures and facial patterns and posture, are those maps that they teach in Jin Shin Jyustu, or is that something you've kind of cultivated individually?
Yes and yes. Yeah, the basic flow patterns are there, and you can learn those. The subtleties of the relationships of those and other things is something I've been particularly interested in some 15 years, 10 years or something like that. And I've studied a lot about that. So I began to see how the body is representing the belief system of the mind. So if you can understand that. And then the other part that's equally important is if we have let's say we're a worrier, we worry a lot. That tension in the breath will create projects that are specific to the attitude of worry. You may have skin issues and so on and so forth. So that relationship, then you say, well, what are you worried about? Oh, I'm not worried about everything, everything's fine. The body doesn't lie. So this is the part where we stop lying to ourselves and we start telling ourselves the truth. And that's difficult for people. It really is.
Really difficult.
Yeah. And so my joy, if you will, or my engagement in this is to move through that difficult process of people admitting to themselves, yeah, I really am not telling the truth. I really have given myself away. I really have done so on and so forth. In a way where it's not threatening, you're not beating them over the head or whatever, but they self-acknowledge. They find their own realization, and you get the ahas. And now they own it. Now it's theirs.
Do you feel like there's something unique about the age demographic of the average 67, 50 to 80, basically, 50
Yeah.
to 90? Is there something unique that kind of creates an opening of being able to self-reflect that people in their youth just don't have?
Yeah, we had practice this morning, and there were maybe a half a dozen young people there. Kids are coming, students are coming back to university and stuff, so it was not surprising to see all of them here. Yes to what you said. In my experience, there's something that happens around 46 to 60 years old. And when I'll always ask them, how old are you? And I want to know, are they on this bridge? And I call it a bridge because at 45, you've got enough life experiences to know. You begin to start to see your patterns. And in the 40s, relationships start to change. Women go through menopause, if you will. Men may change careers. It's a huge period of transition in people's lives. What do they do with that? They're still taking care of their parents, their father, so on and so forth. Well, what do they do with that opportunity? And I'm not saying you chuck the whole thing and walk away. Can you begin to realize or consider another way that you could be in the world? It's always fascinating because that's where you have enough experience in life, you know what's working, you look back and see your patterns, see your projects, see where things worked and didn't work. And now you've got some maturity about yourself. The mind may not be completely mature, but there's a consolidation of wisdom that comes with living. And particularly when you get in the 60s and the 70s. And it's quite fascinating to me to be around them because there's no nonsense. There's really no nonsense. So that's why I'm always interested in how old are you? How old are you? The other thing I've heard, this is what I've heard, that around age 27 is the most vital time for a human body. And then everything after that is the slow glide path to touchdown, transition, if you will. So that means how I manage my life then can determine whether it's a nice, smooth touchdown or one of these things. So if I know that to be true, then that means I can manage my glide path. I'm in control. I pull the power back, pull the power forward, push it forward. And how do I do that? And I need to exercise the body, feed it well, and give it plenty of rest. But what do I really do with my body? Do I eat too much? Do I don't sleep enough? All those kinds of things. Then, of course, the most important part is the mind. How the mind entertains and deals with all that stuff. All minds are the same in a way. I mean that in the sense that we all have the same feelings. What we feel as sadness is the same sadness that they feel in China or Australia or South America or in Africa. We all feel the same. We all have, that's our growth as human beings. So I feel your pain. I understand your suffering. Yes, it's not the same, of course. I'm not there experiencing that, but I have that feeling inside of what that means.
The same palette.
Yeah, I can empathize with you. Yeah.
You were talking about the breath and being able to read the breath and how things often get stuck on the exhale specifically, and that you use that as a determining factor of what's out of balance for your client. And the project. I love that you're calling it projects.
Yeah.
It's such a refreshing reframe. It's not a problem.
That's right.
And we're always projects. We're always in growth. I think that there's a lot of people that have chronic projects, and reframing it, because that also puts you in a place of communicating power and embodying the sense of control that you're actively engaging in this project to do something with it. You're working with it.
Exactly right. And this is Mary Burmeister's word. In her textbooks, she says problems have a lot of emotions to them, projects don't. Projects are pretty clinical, if you will, and you whiteboard and understand what's going on. And she also says that if the body's in disharmony, it's telling me something. I need to pay attention to it. If it's a small little thing, it doesn't take a lot of correcting. The more I ignore it and pretend it's not there, I don't want to deal with it now, the more momentum it gets. Then it becomes a big project and you put a lot of resources on it. And it can be life-threatening. So how well do I know my mind and how well do I know my body? Because the body is going to tell you how it's going to be for you. It's so clear. Yeah, and this is how I am with them. I said, it's all there. It's all there. And if we understand that, we have the tools, it's just a matter of doing. Mm-hmm. You have the responsibility. It's all in your hands. It's all in your mind.
That's one of the interesting things about suffering and pain. It's one of the only motivators that actually, gets people to take action.
That's right. It's the pain. It's a physical pain or mental
pain. Yeah.
Yeah, one or the other. And so that's always the joke. Talk to people and they'll go away and I'll say to them, I said, you're not ready to change because you're not suffering enough. When it gets really, really hard, you'll really consider, really, 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 doing it a different way. And right now it's manageable within your mind. It's in your mind.
You're not suffering enough.
Exactly. You're not suffering enough. You need to up it a little bit. And what we know about the degeneration of the body after 27 years using that as a benchmark, it will get deeper and deeper and deeper and more painful and more painful. And the older you get, the more it's going to manifest into osteoporosis, cancer, heart projects, diabetes. The list isn't that long, quite frankly. Pretty predictable. And if you look at the human life, it's pretty predictable how we live our life out. Born, and we die. And most people don't die being tragically as an automobile accident or some other kind of quick exit. Most of us die because of something in the body fails. Well, if that's true, then I need to really be good at managing my body. Mm-hmm. The food I eat, the exercise, all those kinds of friends I have, what I study, my meditation practice. I can manage that glide path. I can take responsibility for myself in my life. Why not? What a refreshing idea. Yeah.
Done a lot of human dissection and have found that by the time somebody's body is ready to pass on, what ultimately kills them was just the first on the list of, as we discover what's inside of them, many other things that were on the brink of collapsing as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just curious about the breath again.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, the breath is one of those, there's so many aspects of your work and how you look at bodies and peoples and the mind and the body-mind-spirit relationship that has a lot of threads within my work and a lot of threads within the people that I'm interviewing. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious about your perspective of the breath and how you're working with it, and to get a little bit deeper into what you're noticing with the breath. What are things that, what kind of gems can we glean from you about understanding breath more?
Yeah. The more we're willing to let go and exhale, the freer we are. Where does that, if you really have a serious meditation practice, you will know the texture of your exhale. You'll feel it all the way down. And what is that texture? How much tension is it? How smooth and silky is it? And you notice that, and you notice that. You notice that. So the deeper, the slower, the more attentive I am to that dropping my shoulders. Nice posture. So you literally, in some of my meditation practice, I literally drain the head. You just go all the way down.
Like energetically or with your breath? You just exhale from your brain all the way down.
So I'm exhaling with my breath, and I'm feeling this energetic draining happen also at the same time. They both meet essentially at the dantian there.
Which is the pelvic, the
Exactly.
pelvic floor.
That's right. And there is this pause right there, the space between. Exhale, inhale. The place of infinite possibilities. So in that, if I let go, then I have infinite possibilities of receiving what? Whatever you want. And it's that awareness, that attentiveness in that. And equally important is, of course, you cultivate that, but my special interest now is what do you do when you get off the cushion with it? What do you do with that awareness and that understanding? If you don't put it in your life, what's the point? I mean, you may feel good for 45 minutes and light pouring out of the top of your head, and angels are singing and all of that. And then what? And then what? And then what? If you're not changing yourself and those around you, what's the point? And of course, the point is, the more I let go of myself, then the more I can embrace all that is. I find that, and of course, we're all separated beings, and yet we're all interrelated and interconnected. There is no separation, yet our whole society drives separation. It just forces us apart. You know, you're prettier than that person, and you have more money than that person. Yeah. And now in this social digital age that we live in, do we even feel more isolated? Maybe. I think so. And that's the real joy of working with these ladies. They're willing to let it all go. And what's the point of hanging on to it, you know? Hang on to it. So it's that deep awareness, that you cultivate in meditation. Follow that breath. And that's the essence of who you are. Breath connects all that is.
So it's really like a discovery of authenticity in a sense.
Yeah, because you're right. You're exactly right. Because at the end of the exhale, that authenticity is you. You know, there's no more labeling anymore, comparing anymore, because you've let it all go.
Or even being present to it makes you more authentic. So if you're a tight bound person, just noticing that I'm having an aspect of myself that's operating in a stressful mode right now, that just makes you more authentic because you have a self that's aware of the pattern.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then over periods of time, like I said, we've been together now some 4 years, and to see the transformation is just breathtaking. Yeah, breathtaking. And the willingness to consider another point of view. Not that you have to, but just the willingness to consider. Is there another way to look at what happened to you? Because there's some that have pretty dramatic backgrounds in childhood and those kinds of abuses that we all know about. And how do they see that differently? How could they experience that differently when there's that deep shame and blame inside? How do they do that? That's what we do. We polish the stone. Polish the stone. Yeah.
And then how do you integrate the Jin Shin Jyustu with all of this? So it's manual techniques of some kind. What kind of maps do you use to work with?
So there's two parts to this, two parts of what's going on here. One part is the meditation weekend, where all we deal with is meditation, the mind, and so forth. Then there's these study groups of Jin Shin Jyustu. And now these are groups that have, over my years there's people that organize these classes, and there's several have said, you know, would you come and do a special study group? And so those are limited to 12 or 15 people. And there we go deeply into the material, and we look at individual projects, their projects. And so they begin to nature. And so here you can see meditation. And of course, many people that are doing this are also doing the other things. So they tie those things together. Some don't. Some are not Jin Shin Jyustu students. But we tie it together. Whatever it is, whether it's meditation or the Jin Shin Jyustu study groups, the goal is always the same. And the goal is always freedom, choice, and the ability to choose differently. The ability to take the backward step, the ability to pause, creating the ma between this and that. How do we do that? And you cultivate that on the zafu. You cultivate, and we don't sit as such in the study groups, but we do hands-on. These are where you get on a table and each student will get a session of about 45 minutes, and then they'll swap around. It takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours to do that. When the person's on the table, their job is to let go. No thinking, no more thinking, no more thinking. And to see how far you can sink in the massage table. And then they have the practitioners on each side, then we'll do these flows. Because we will have gone around and said, I want to do this flow because it works on some aspect of who they are. And then we'll talk about it afterwards. You know, I'll do body reading, for example. Somebody will get on the table and we'll go through the whole body and look at the relationships between bust line, waistline, hip line, because there's patterns in there.
So you're looking at like the structural relationships. Somebody's just standing in front of the class and you guys are discussing.
They're actually on a table.
They're on a table, so you're
On their
without
back.
gravity.
Yeah.
on their back and you're discussing, well, isn't that funny how their head's over here and their
Exactly.
pelvis
Why
in this
is
way,
that?
and
Since we know
whatever
the
rotation.
energetic patterns, we can say it's because of this. Well, the effect is the head turning this way. The cause is this energetic pattern is not in harmony. So there's the effect and the cause. What's the cause of the effect? Well, that's the attitude. But what's the cause of the cause, the effect, cause of the cause of the cause of the cause? Why does a person have that attitude? And that's when we get to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we get to it. So
And
why do you...
Through digging, is that how you discover it?
Yeah.
Just
And-
keep asking questions and digging the why, the why, the why?
Yeah, and part of that is, so somebody's on the table, nobody's allowed to talk, everybody's looking around, nobody's allowed to talk, nobody's allowed to come up and touch the body, because I'm in a conversation with a person on the table, and we are directly in contact with one another. And so if somebody asks a question, it breaks that relationship. And so I will start at their feet, and I will then talk about this body and interpret this body and so on and so forth. And inevitably, I'll ask the person a question, and they say yes. Somebody has an injury, for example, they broke their leg. It's not that you broke your leg. Why did you break your leg? What were the circumstances of that? Not that you have cancer. Why do you have cancer? And when did cancer form? What was the event? What was the psychological, physical event that started the cancer? Now, this may be controversial to some people. My experience is, if we can find that event, which is cancer, when did it first appear? What happened 2 years prior to that? And inevitably, cancer is related to sadness and loss. And that can be across the spectrum, not necessarily physical loss of a relationship, it can be a loss of health, it can be a loss of a job, it can be anything that the mind was hanging on to, is now is gone, and it wants it back so deeply. That, of course, affects the breath, because the breath now is right about here. It's and the breath over time accumulates fatigue in the body. If you don't exhale, there's tension, and that accumulates as fatigue in the body. It's made controversial to the audience, but cancer is accumulation of fatigue in the body. What are tumors? What are tumors? It's the inability of energy to move through its designed pathways. If we know that, so now we know the effect, we know how to work with that. More importantly, how does the mind work with that? Because you get a big label like that, a big scary label, and most people just want it to go away. Through the surgeries, I went to radiation, so on and so forth. But do they actually ask themselves, why? Why do I have this? If we're responsible for our body, no, you did it to me, it's in a relation. No. They may be inputting you, but you choose how you interpret that and how you receive that. And if you're at the effect of that, then there's tension in the breath for that. Mm-hmm. Tension in the breath. So if we can uncover that and talk about that and experience that, they experience that and can let go. And they let go on the table. And they let go, and then here it comes. And everybody, no tissues, don't go up and say, poor me. Let them have this moment of release. They've been carrying this burden their whole life. Let them let it go. Let them experience what it feels not to have it, just once in their life. It's remarkable. Mm-hmm. That's remarkable.
I mean, that's real transformation right there.
Yeah.
Like that seems like one of your skill sets. It almost seems like you have Jin Shin Jyustu as this excuse that most people think they need some treatment.
Exactly. Well said.
And so, they're coming to get a treatment, and that's fine. You can think that you're getting a treatment, but really your skill set is feeling into the system and listening really to the system, and then asking the questions until they're able to just have that big release, have that shift.
And if you will, in a way, it's just backing the mind in a corner where it has no way to run off, has no exit, has no off-ramp. And you just keep asking questions until it just collapses on itself, until it says, yes, are you willing to accept responsibility for this? After da-da-da. And then you help them, show them how you can do that. Mm-hmm. Facilitate them. And of course the relationships that come out of it, it's just extraordinary. Mm-hmm. It's just extraordinary. Yeah. What a blessing. I mean, I am blessed beyond blessed. There's no question about it. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. clock's ticking, clock's ticking. And you work with them and you work with them and you start asking questions and, tell me about your life and what you're doing and how things are. And, you have a little stress in your life. Of course, that's an easy one. Everybody's got stress in their life. Yeah, boy, if you only knew it, tell me a little bit about that. And then here it comes. Then I'll say, how much freedom do you have in your life? I don't have any freedom. Do you have choice in there? And you start that conversation. And what you want them to do, of course, is to reflect back on themselves and realize, I don't have choice. Do I want to change, yes or no? It always comes back to that. It's either yes or no. Yeah, it's remarkable. It really is. Yeah. And the pulse, I haven't even talked about the pulses, all the pulses, we read pulses. And
similar to acupuncture?
Yeah, but very much like that. Yeah, very much like that. And for fifth step person, pretty easy. Bang, 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 bang. All that efforting and stuff. And women as well. I'm picking on this guy, but women as well. Very much fifth step people because they working so hard. I got to do this, and I go over here and do this, and it never stops for them. Never stops. I weep sometimes for the ladies in Europe and in America too.
Women show up a little more wiry than the men. The men have that extra thud, where the women have it, but has a wiriness to it.
You're right. Yeah. And the men though are like this, but there's also a great pretense about it. Men are supposed to be strong and never show their emotions, so they're not going to admit.
Which, in that thumping, is almost a layer of the thickness to the pump.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. And you keep banging away at that, pretty soon the edges of that are going to start to tear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're talking about doing half of a half, right? In my work, we do similar stuff. And I love the conversation of what is embodiment. It's just such a fascinating discussion because to me, embodiment is a sense of knowing of self and when you have an embodied understanding, you know it in your deepest bones.
Mm-hmm.
You know it not only through your soul, but it's reached your body.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole aspect of remapping your third dimensional self by learning how to move with the intrinsic muscles, these tiny control muscles, that suddenly remaps, and then they get to show up in the world without effort, just having this better sense of self, just through this practice of intrinsic discovery.
Yeah, that's what's so wonderful about the world now is there's so many different modalities and any different way you want to get, and they all go to the same place. They all end up in the same place, which is what? Harmonize the body, harmonize the mind, so they can live in communion with one another. It's really fascinating. I admire everybody who does any kind of work like that. Yeah. How do we ease the suffering in the world? In our own little way. We do that. One's no better, no worse than the other. We just do our way.
So Jin Shin Jyustu, what's the origin story behind it?
The origin story is that there was a man in Japan, Jeremiah, prior to World War II, very really smart man, studied acupuncture, acupressure, did all those kinds of modalities, and went on in his own individual study to find different energetic pathways in the body. And during the war, he was in...
Which war?
World War II. Yeah. So he would help people with that. And then after the war, Mary Brewmeister went to Japan before the war, and then she went back after the war and studied with him for 5 or 6 years or so, and then came back to the United States and brought that back with her. And it's remarkable material. That's remarkable material. It's one of those things that she brought back. She went to Los Angeles, settled there with her husband, started a family, met a man named Manly Palmer Hall, Philosophical Research Society in Los Angeles. And my view is that he helped her and introduced her into numerology, astrology, and all the other arts that are out there like that. And that's what she folded into her work. But the essence of her work was always the philosophy. You are your own person. all those kinds of phrases that remind us that we are who we are. We forget a lot, particularly for the effect of other people's opinion, and we believe that they have the authority and the power over us. How do we get out of that, as you well know? How do we get out of that to be our own person? I was looking at the young students this morning. Students, and they do look young. I'm 80 years old, and they're what, in their mid-20s or something like that? Absolutely.
Well, and you're working with an older demographic as well.
Yeah. And just to see that potentiality of a life and what they do with it and stuff. I was recently talking to a young man who's going off to university, and I said, do not squander your life. Don't do it. Don't get to the end of your life wishing you had done this or that or so on and so forth because a little bit hard or whatever those excuses are. Don't do it. Don't regret. Don't regret that you didn't do it. Yeah, we'll see.
What's your advice for people that have a hard time having regret, so it's blocking them from feeling it?
Well, I think that the place that we have to begin with that is to tell the truth about what happened. Not the interpretation, not the pain, and not all the suffering. I'm not saying that isn't legitimate, but I find that if we can go back and look at the actual facts of what happened and separate that from the emotions and accept responsibility, those are the facts. I'm driving a car, it has a flat tire, that's a fact. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it's been a long time since I've changed a flat tire. This is really exciting. Or if I'm on the way to the airport and I'm an hour late, this is not good news. And I will respond accordingly to my interpretation of those facts. Car, tire, flat, that's a fact. Same thing with all situations. What are the facts about that? And are you willing to consider, can you imagine another way of seeing that or experiencing that? Just imagine it. You don't have to do anything. Can you imagine it? Some people say, no, conversation's over. You get your suffering. Congratulations, enjoy. Yeah. And when you're done, we'll come back and have another conversation. And sometimes that happens. People need to be with that. They, the rage, the anger, the sense of revenge, betrayal. It's all in there. Mm-hmm. And how do you respond to that?
How do you respond to that?
You tell yourself the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You tell yourself the truth. If you're in a situation and you're a young person, you have no control over that, and something unfortunate happened to you, that's the fact. That's happened. How do you forgive that? How do you forgive that? You understand, my view, you understand what was behind the person who was doing that. Father to son, son to da-da-da-da-da. And this generation clearly is breaking that chain, clearly. And saying, no more, no more. You can see them step up and say, no more. And so part of that conversation with them is for them to appreciate, I'll just pick on guys, they want us to be warm and mushy. We aren't taught that. We aren't taught that. In Europe, they're not taught that. Women want to be engaging and talking. Men are not conditioned that way.
Do you think it's conditioning, or do you think it's also nature, or someplace in the middle, or?
To me, it's conditioning. My experience with men now is, which is wrapping up. I'm working with a man now, stage 3 rectal cancer. And if you listen to his story and you go back and undo the story of why, not the cancer, that's the effect, that's the project. Unfortunately, he's getting all that medical work, but let's move it all the way back to the beginning. At 4 years old, his father and his mother divorced. And every week, he would either be with his father, and the next week, he'd be with his mother. Back and forth, back and forth. Really? Really? Where does he learn emotional stability and maturity out of that kind of a relationship? And he's a very dutiful, lovely man, and very responsible for his family and his children, and very successful, and so on and so forth. Then I said to him the other day, I said, no matter what happens, I will always be there for you. Always. You only have to call me. And he put his hands in his face and he wept. Because nobody has ever done that for him before. Father's not available. And he lives in New York City. Yeah. And he wept. I told him the next time I come back, I'm coming through New York City, and he wept. The first conversation, he wept 3 times. And this is a man that's chemotherapy. He's cancer, rectal cancer. Yeah. I said, who holds you? Who loves you? He's married, and yes, of course. But I mean, I'm talking about heart holding. I'm not talking about no disrespect. I don't mean any disrespect by this. But hey, it's just. So my relationship with him now is, oh, let's love each other. I said, I love you. He said, but you just know me. I know your heart. I know your heart. How much time do we need? There's that unconditional acceptance. I love you just as you are. Just as you are. And it's enough. We have the most beautiful relationship. And other clients, similar kinds of stories. New Zealand, Yeah.
And you're far enough along your journey that when you don't have unconditional love for somebody, you don't see that as their fault. You see that as your wounding pattern. That's your project to work on, right?
Yeah. If I have any sense of something from them, it's me. I'm receiving, I'm interpreting that. So where do I look? Huh? My work, it's not done. Let's go sit and consider that one for a minute. Where did that come from? Why do I still have it? I thought I was done with that. And then here it comes again. So, we keep shaving the edges off until it's absolutely clear that we're done with it. Yeah. So I'm blessed beyond blessed to have these relations. I mean that most sincerely. I really do. To share another human's life like that, and that deepest sense of intimacy, and all the giggles that go with that. We have our lunches, and there at any one time there could be 6 ladies in the kitchen, all talking and doing all this kind of stuff. And we sit at this long table, and we share a meal together. Itadakimasu, and everybody dives in. Yeah, it's absolutely breathtaking. Yeah, absolutely breathtaking. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions of how people can actually get into their heart more?
A couple of thoughts came up very quickly for me. Accept responsibility for yourself. No excuses. No excuses. If you want to know who you are, start right where you are and start telling yourself the truth. Completely. Not making it up, not because it feels uncomfortable, but that's the hard work. And if you do that, then underneath that is your true self. And you will love yourself as it is. But we lie to ourselves because we don't know how to get there. That's my view, my experience. People do not know how to get there. They don't. Oh, read this book, take this class, go to this course. Yeah, your mind may have a deeper understanding there, but where's the visceral experience of that? I mean, in the body experience, where there's no talking, and you're experiencing telling yourself the truth, admitting, yeah, I was part of that, asking yourself for forgiveness. I apologize. I just did that with my teacher for something that happened years ago, and I realized, and I bow, I did prostrations for him. It was not integrous. It was not full of virtue. No. If you want to love yourself, find out who you are. You begin by telling yourself the truth and accepting responsibility. If you cause another person harm, go, apologize, clean it up. And you will feel so different for having done that. You just go, oh, sorry about that. It doesn't work. Because the mind still carries it with it. It knows. It knows forgiveness too. Heart forgiveness, it knows that. And then there it is. Accept responsibility.
You were talking about giving homework to clients, holding fingers. Tell me more about that. It seems like really individual things.
Because we know that the organ function energies go through various parts of the fingers or in the toes. So if somebody has a heart project, one of the organ function energies goes into the little finger, and the other part of that comes out. So we would have the person hold their little finger as a way of harmonizing the heart function energy. And it works.
So if you're trying to get in your heart and you're working on accepting responsibility for your life, would you also recommend
holding the heart,
holding the little finger? Does it matter which side? Which
no,
hand?
Just hold the little finger.
Just hold one of your little fingers.
If you're really angry, hold the middle finger.
Hold the middle finger.
Because this has a relationship to anger.
Okay.
This is about fear. If you're fearful, hold the index finger.
Index.
If you're a worrier, and you see children sucking their thumb. Why are they worrying? Hold the thumb. Sadness, hold the ring finger.
Ring finger.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many little tricks like that. You're driving a car and you're really anxious. You can just wrap your hands around the steering wheel. Well, that looks familiar, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Ah, that helps with the breath. Ah. You know, you roll up to a traffic light, you know, you never have to worry about when the traffic light turns green. Somebody in the back will tell you, thank you very much. And off you go.
So you're just like doing a mudra
Exactly,
while you're driving, and
exactly.
it helps to harmonize.
Yeah.
That's
This is
great.
all about the breath, this mudra here. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Do you have any last words you want to share? Any words of wisdom? Any takeaways you want to give to the audience?
Yeah. It is precious. Life is so incredibly precious. One day, I, you, us, we won't have it. So between now and then, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want? What am I willing to do to experience whatever that is? Because the clock is ticking. Time is precious. The body is wearing itself out. It is going to fail someplace, sometime. So between now and then, what do I want? What kind of relationships do I want? What kind of love do I want? What kind of intimacy do I want? How will I help people? The clock is ticking. So in my life, time to get up and get at it. So we get up, a group of people, we get up at 3:30, we sit at 4 o'clock a.m. Europe time every single morning. Every single morning for an hour. For 2 years we've been doing this. If you can't do this one thing, how do you expect anything to change? And there they are. There they are. There they are. And we gasho to each other through WhatsApp or Signal or something else. And at the end we gasho again. Yeah. Yeah. So it's community. How can we create that? Tuesday morning, we do it by Zoom. People log in and Zoom. 5 minutes before I do the rope chant, we sit for 40 minutes, I do a couple chants after that, and then we sit in front of each other for whatever time you want, and then they click off. And I thought several years ago before the pandemic, Zoom, I can't do that, it's too impersonal. Boy, I don't believe that anymore. There is no such thing as time and space. You get there. There was a lady the other day, and people click off, and she stayed on. At the end, she, not a single word had been spoken. Yeah. It's just that. It's just that. Yeah. It's just that. So, don't squander your life. Yeah. When I spent a year in Zen Mountain Monastery, and at the end of that every night, the liturgist would chant this. She would say, "Let me respectfully remind you, life and death is of supreme importance. Time swiftly passes by, and opportunity is lost. Take heed, do not squander your life." And that's the last thing we would hear before we would go to bed. Do not squander your life. So if I were to say anything, do not squander your life. Life is so incredibly precious.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a real joy talking with you, Haku-san.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, beloveds, for joining us for another episode of So Many Ways to Heal, where we explore ways of healing the body, mind, and soul to find wholeness, health, vitality, and to reveal your authentic self. If this content resonates with you, be sure to give it a like and subscribe, and share this video with your loved ones. Speaking of your loved ones, if you know of an amazing healer, teacher, or facilitator that would be a good fit for the show, or you know someone who has an amazing story of healing that will help inspire others, please connect us. You can find my email below, along with the links to YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. We know the best healing tool is love and gratitude, so I'm sending my love and gratitude to you.
Blessed we are the way showers of the light. We birth a new earth for a new timeline. We are all divine on the inside, so let your